Good morning, all of you. Today we are going to learn one of the poems written by Robert Burns entitled My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose. The title itself is symbolic, connotative, meaningful, which manifests the essence or the crux of the poem. The poem is quite simple to understand because it talks about the notion of love. In Robert Burns' poem, My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose, we come across the hardships in love, the challenges in love, and the utmost feeling of the poet who is in love. My love is like a red, red rose is being interpreted by many critics differently. The speaker in this poem bids farewell to his beloved and promises to return to her. So, the promise in love poetry plays a crucial role. In love poetry, in literature, we come across overstatements, exaggerations, hyperbole, which takes us beyond the physical nature. For instance, early 17th century, that is poetry, that is metaphysical poetry. Go, go and catch a falling star, for instance. Shakespeare has also stated the fact that I have talked about love. If I committed any mistake, and if you point out any mistake that I have said, and if I agree that I have made a mistake somewhere else here in poetry, then I will leave everything and go away. This is the essence what he has said so. So in this poem, the speaker bids farewell to his beloved and promises to return to her. In love, there is hardly any importance is given to hardships, obstacles, the problems. So in love, hardships never matters. What matters is love because love is supposed to be blind. The poem entitled as My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose opens with the speaker comparing his beloved to a red, red rose. The poet goes on praising her beauty. What is beauty? It is said that the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. The beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So, the poem opens with the speaker comparing his beloved to a red, red rose and praising her beauty, the dazzling beauty. So, in this context, one thing is quite clear that the literary language is absolutely different from the ordinary language. Whenever we go shopping or go to a market, we never use the literary language there. We can never say how much kilo tomatoes you give me, the red tomatoes. We cannot say so because this looks something different, because literary language is totally different from the language which is being used in literature. So let's go through this. The poet declares that his love for her is so deep and everlasting that will survive until the sea dries up. In most of the times, we can see one thing, that love is blind, love is unconditional, and there is much more importance to the spiritual love, which retains its presence after the death also. No death can do anything with love. This is what exactly Robert Burns brings out through his poetry. He declares that his love for her is so immense, so deep. His love for her is as deep as the sea, and love will never end. Love will survive till the sea dries up. Till the sea dries up. So here, the poet promises that although he must leave, he will come back even if he must travel 1,000 miles to do so. He promises that although he must leave, he will return, he will come back, he will come soon, even if he must travel 10,000 miles to do so. In this context, the poet promises his beloved that he will return to her, although he has to cover 10,000 miles land. So, this is quite interesting to know the notion of love in the poem entitled My Love is Like a Red Rose. A red rose is titled in some anthologies according to its first line. I quote, "Oh, my love is like a red rose," was written in 1794 and printed in 1796. This can be treated as the song, which is enjoyed as a simple, unaffected effusion of sentiment, or it may be understood on a more complex level as a lover's promises that are full of contradictions, ironies, and paradoxes. So here the poem gets embedded with numerous promises put forth by the lover. That's why William Shakespeare says that there are three mad people in this world. The first is the lunatic, who is mad by nature. The second person who is mad is the poet. The poet is a mad person because he is always in his own imagination. And the third person who is mad, that is a lover who does not have anything to do with this life. He is blind. So, in this context, what is crucial to understand that the poet has full of promises about love. The poet talks about numerous contradictions, ironies, paradoxes through poetry. Because the expression of love is not so simple to comprehend. Love has multiple, plural, complicated shades of meanings like a rainbow. The meaning gets differed as per the context, as per the different temperaments and inclinations embedded in and ingrained into poetry. So here it can be understood at a complex level once we go through numerous paradoxes, ironies, similes, hyperbole, metaphor, numerous figures of speech, and contradictions in poetry. So that's why the poem can be treated as the song. It's a simple, unaffected effusion of sentiments. The poem is the expression of love. The poem brings out the feelings and emotions of the poet in its crystal clear manner. The reader should keep in mind the fact that Burns composed the poem stanza by stanza. The poet deconstructs old songs and ballad to use parts that he could revise and improve. This can be treated as a love song. This can be treated as a ballad. For example, Robert Burns, in the first stanza, he may be compared with his source. What is the source of this poetry? It has some base. The source of this poetry is the wanton wife of Castlegate. Here the poet goes on to appreciate her beauty. Here the poet says her cheeks are like the roses that blossom fresh in June. Oh, she is like a new strung instrument that has newly put in June. Clearly, Robert Burns' version is more delicate, perfect, and interesting in consideration. The poet emphasizes on the absolute redness of the rose. The rose is red in color, but he repeats the word red, red. My love is like a red, red rose. Why he emphasizes on red? What is the symbolic connotations, denotations, and the significance of the word adjective red in poetry is to be comprehended. In this context, the poet focuses his attention on the redness of the rose. The poet never says, my love is like a red rose. He repeats, he reiterates, he focuses on The fact that my love is like a red, red rose. In this fashion, the poet simply demonstrates his seeming artlessness as a sign of sincerity. So, whenever we talk about art, whenever I say something about art, I simply remember Oscar Wilde's lines about art, that he is of the opinion that art lies in concealing its artfulness. So, in this context, we can see the fact that the poet uses the rhyming scheme in poetry in this poem. Especially, he uses the rhyme such as June, tune in this poetry. Robert Burns' language is quite simple, and the simplicity of his language marks the poetry distinctive in English poetry because it generates the effect of absolute purity. So the poem has to be understood in its critical manner. The readers of this poem, they simply analyze the poem using the tools of new criticism or other 20th century critical approaches. The poem is to be studied deeply through the critical approaches such as new criticism or 20th century critical approaches. So the feeling of love is important in this poem. Love is not measured, love is not conquered. But if we try to understand exactly the two entities, that is love and time, who is more powerful? Love overcomes time or time overcomes love? It's interesting to know in this point who is powerful. According to a few poets who opine that love is more powerful than time because love has its presence even after death. The spiritual love is said to be the most powerful one. But there are a few thinkers who are of the opinion that time is more powerful than love because time has the tremendous power to destroy love. Who is much more powerful? Is it beauty or time? Beauty overcomes time or time overcomes beauty? Beauty can be destroyed by time. It's a cruel time that can finish the beauty in no time. But there is hardly any view, maybe, that can be found in the metaphysical poetry about the beauty which can overcome time. Because time is unconquered. No one can win time. No one can conquer time. Time is fleeting, time is moving fast, time is going on and on. If you want to win time, you can win time in time. So that's very important to know about the fact that time has the tremendous power to conquer each and everything in life. So, here in this context, I would like to say one thing, that the poem needs to be analyzed critically through the tools of new criticism or other 20th century critical approaches. Let's say the observations made by the critics about my love is like a red, red rose. The poem has a number of contradictory elements that seem to work against the speaker's innocent protestations of love. The first two lines of the second stanza do not complete an expected or logical thought. The poet goes on to say about his love, so deep in love I am. Am I? The poet reiterates the fact that I am in love so deeply that I cannot bear to leave my beloved. The poet is of the opinion that I am not going to leave her at any cost. I am in love. I never leave my beloved. The speaker rhetoric, rhetorically protests his love through a series of boasts. Maybe there are some boasts, and it's the boastful nature of the poet that may talk many times some strange things, which may seem to be something different to the readers, and that may harm the purity of love, where the poet may say anything to the beloved, to the paramour, to the lover. He may say, I can bring the stars, I can bring the moon and the sun, everything to you. So, such thinking is overstated. That can be termed as the metaphysical thinking. In metaphysical poetry, also, you may come across sees the moon, sees the sun. Here is the metaphor that the poet, the metaphysical poets, mostly use. There are some far fetched images, similes, paradoxes, contrast, contradictory statements, which heighten the sense of the poetry. But this poem seems to be quite different because it talks about the feeling of love of the poet's innocent protestations of love. That's why the poet says, so deep in love am I. The speaker rhetorically protests his love through a series of boasts. His love will last until the seas go dry. What exactly the poet says that? He says about his love, which is perpetual. The poet loves his beloved forever. And this permanence, this perpetuality in love lasts forever till the seas go dry. Just imagine that the seas will never go dry till the universe exists. And in this fashion, the poet wants to say that my love is permanent, my love is not temporary. The poet also says that my love will last until rocks melt with the sun. No rock is going to be melted through the power of the sun. This again shows that his love is permanent. He will continue to love her while the sands of life in an hourglass shall run. So, here in this context, the poet says that my love is going to be permanent till the sands of life in an hourglass is running. This shows the permanence of love, the eternity of love, and the love is absolutely different from the transitoriness of love. Life is like a bubble, but love finds its permanence in life. It's not life which is like a bubble. So one can come across different shades of love in the poem presented by Robert Burns entitled My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose. Here in this context, we can understand one thing that the lover in this poem is departing from his beloved. The lover is going away from the beloved. He is not staying by her side. The reason is not stated. Just it is said that the poet is departing from his beloved. Whatever may be the reason, the poet, the lover, is supposed to leave her rather than remains with her. Whatever may be the reason, he is compelled to leave her. So here, at such a time, what he says is important. Maybe there is the exaggeration of his promise he made to her. The final exaggerated promise that can be understood here, that he says that he will return to her though the journey takes 1,000 miles. Whatever the journey may be, I will return to you surely. This seems far fetched. This seems ironically humorous. But such a titanic effort, why he is not staying with her? The question that baffles us, that baffles the readers. Why he is leaving her? What may be the reason? Why is not staying with her? This needs to be understood. But the reason is not given here. These paradoxical reflections will radically change the content of the poem. It changes the perception of the readers while focusing attention on the purity of the poem. Because the poem is considered to be a pure lyric to one of irony because it's so difficult to reconcile on the level of common sense. What the lover has not exaggerated his or her emotions, one can come across the exaggerated promises of Burns in his poetry. Are these exaggerated promises of Burns' speaker any less sincere for being illogical? No matter how the reader resolves this issue, she cannot help but admire Burns' art in revising the meter of his source for the last stanza, an old song titled The True Lover's Farewell. Fare you well, my own true love, the poet says. Fare you well means the poet departs her. My own true love, and fare you well for a while, and I will be sure to return back again. Fare you well, my own true love, and fare you well for a while, and I will be sure to return back again. If I go 10,000 miles, although Burns' revisions are minor, they reveal the difference in technique between a merely competent poet and a master. So here the poet promises to come back to meet her again and again. So in this poem, we will see a few quotations of writers regarding to love, the theme of love. Let's go through this. And tomorrow, the second portion of this poem will be continued by stanza, line by line. I will explain, interpret the poem tomorrow. But right now, I would like to say something about a few quotations made by the poets, different poets about love. There is one quotation about Thoreau who says, there is no remedy for love but to love more. Love has no remedy except loving more is the solution of all remedies. There is one more quotation that I would like to say in this context is by Joanna Verissimo, who says, if there is love, the desire to stay will always exist. Love gets connected with the desire, innermost desire of stay. That's why the critic is of the opinion that if there is love, the desire to stay will always exist. Let's see the opinion of love in the words of Oscar Wilde, who says, never love anybody who treats you like you are ordinary. If you are treated as an ordinary being, never love the person whom you love very much or so much. Jane Austen is of the opinion about love. Jane Austen says, I was quiet, but I was not blind in love. Victor Hugo is of the opinion that love is the flower for which love is the honey, by Victor Hugo. So here this lecture is over. Immediately I start the second lecture. So please continue, because this video is going to be ended now. Just 1 minute is there. So the second lecture will be continued. Just what you have to do is to simply click the same link and join the class. Okay, thank you.